and welcome to Global Impact, everybody. We are on the 4th season of the show. And by the way, happy birthday to my co-host, Michael BOCIURKIW. How old are you?
Thank you very much.
Are you going to tell us how old you are?
It's great to be 50 again.
Well, why don't you go for 40? I think you look more like 40.
Oh, thank you very much. Sorry, it's blushing. It's
Flattery will get you everywhere.
Lack of air circulation.
Right. So today we are going to go international, and we have a very special guest. We're going to go to Ukraine. We're going to time travel, through Ukraine right now. It's 7 a.m. here in LA, and we're Vancouver, right? You're in Vancouver right now.
Correct, Vancouver
So
Island.
it's pretty early, but we made that time because whoever is coming, he has a lot to say. It's very important. And I think a lot of people would want to hear what he has to say. On that note, let's get into the bio.
Sure.
So we have a very special guest from Ukraine, and he happens to be the Minister of Foreign Affairs. His name is DMYTRO KULEBA. I hope I haven't butchered the name. And he's not a typical diplomat. So let's go into his bio quickly before we get him on the show. Well, at 40 years old, he's one of the youngest international diplomats to come out of Ukraine. And he's also a best-selling author and was awarded with the title of Best Ambassador of the Year by the Institute of World Policy. Not only that, but as a Minister of Foreign Affairs, he is now his father's boss, which is very unusual. Yet his father is currently serving as Ukraine's ambassador to Armenia. On the job just a year and a half, the number of files he inherited provide for a heavy workload. They range from the 2014 illegal annexation of Crimea by Russia and the occupation of eastern Ukraine by Russian-backed rebels to the resolution of the shoot-down of Ukrainian Airlines PS-752 over Tehran last year. He became minister just as the COVID-19 pandemic began to spread around the world. So and it's kind of heavy in Ukraine right now. The pandemic is really bad. So not an easy year for him. Michael, would you like to keep going?
Sure, not an easy year indeed. So before he became minister, Mr. Kuleba headed an effort to pull the foreign ministry out of the Stone Age by introducing concepts of digital diplomacy, strategic communications, cultural diplomacy, and public diplomacy. He is currently lobbying very, very hard for Ukraine to become a member of NATO and for full membership, of course, in the European Union or the EU. Just this week, in very threatening language, Russian President Vladimir Putin said allowing Ukraine to join NATO would represent the crossing of, quote unquote, a red line. Why should we pay attention to what happens in Ukraine? Well, many analysts say the country of more than 43 million people should be regarded as one of the most strategically important in the world, given how it sits as a buffer between Russia and the West. All that said, at the moment, Mr. Kuleba probably has one of the toughest jobs in global diplomacy at the moment, and we are grateful that he has taken time out of his very busy schedule to speak to Global Impact.
So, all right, Vitajemo, Monsieur le Ministre des Affaires étrangères, and welcome to Global Impact. We are on the 4th season, and this is the 3rd episode. So, as you know, this show is not a formal show. It's more about, as I was saying, it's more about having our audience to get to know you personally and then connect the dots so they don't have to. We're just helping people, basically. So let's dive into the beginning, where you started. So from our research, your dad is a diplomat and you grew up basically traveling a lot. Your dad is an ambassador. And how was that? Did that prepare you to become yourself, to become a career diplomat? And was it tough on you, all the traveling that you were experiencing when you were a child?
Well, it is true that I grew up in the middle of diplomacy since 1992, when my father abandoned proposal to work in Moscow for the big, for then Ministry of Gas and Energy.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, now it is Gazprom now. So if he had stayed in Moscow in 1991, I could have been a son of a Russian gas oligarch.
Oh,
Wow.
But
oh wow.
I was more lucky because my father had always had a very strong sentiment towards his roots and towards our country, towards Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
So he did not hesitate in 1991 when he received a proposal to come back and help a new independent country.
Okay.
So we went back. His salary at that time was $5 per month, just to give you an understanding of a salary of a diplomat, of a Ukrainian diplomat in 1991.
Mm-hmm.
Miserable years in terms of quality of life, but it was my chance to start living, as I said, to start living in the middle of diplomacy, basically from my teenage years. And I'm extremely grateful for my father for that. I still remember, you know, my generation of Ukrainian diplomats does not remember the last pre-independence generation of diplomats, and I do remember them as a child of a diplomatic family. And I'm very proud of this knowledge because it helps me to connect generations in our system and to continue this institutional, to ensure this institutional continuity and legacy of previous generations of our diplomats. So I'm extremely grateful for that experience, for that time. Though I must tell you that in my last year in the university, I studied international law, and I won internship at one of the leading Ukrainian law firms. Okay. And so when I went there, I saw a state-of-the-art office building and office premises. Everyone inside was wearing nice suits and dresses. Everything was really cool, beautiful women, beautiful men. And I thought, wow, maybe I really should drop the idea of becoming a diplomat and going back to this old-fashioned building and to low salaries, and instead choose a profession of a lawyer and be rich. And I did have this hesitation, but then I thought, no, you had a dream and you have to accomplish it. You have to make it.
What was the dream, Minister? What was the dream?
Professionally, my dream was to be a diplomat.
Okay. And what did you, when you were that age, when you were younger, what drove you to want to be a diplomat? What was the purpose? Did you have like a calling, or did you feel like you had to be just a diplomat, or did you have a vision?
Well, for some reasons, I was bold enough to think that I can do this job better than many other people. No, but seriously speaking, there was a moment when my father served as in the Ukrainian mission to the UN in Vienna, to the UN institution head stationed in Vienna, in Austria. Right. And I remember him coming from his work, and he would drop a line to my mom like, well, it was a difficult day. I had to speak on behalf of the country and participate in a debate, and it was pretty hot and tough. And as a teenager, you like think, wow, you speak on behalf of the country. You represent the country. You defend interests of 50 million nation. I think this makes my profession very special. That on the one hand, it's a huge responsibility to speak on behalf of your country and to take risks of making decisions in the interests of your country. On the other hand, it gives you this incredible drive from inside. And the third element, you know, I was raised by my parents always with this idea that the best thing you can do in life is to serve your people and your country. It sounds very naive, probably.
No, it's not.
When we speak in 2029, in 2021, but I can recall dozens of times when my mother would say, you know, serve the country, serve the people. This is ours. We have to be part of it. Mm-hmm. And my mother is a teacher of Ukrainian language and literature, so you know, maybe she got all these idealistic ideas from Ukrainian literature and history and poems and novels. But I would say that these three elements formed my dream of becoming a diplomat, like to speak for the country and to represent the country, right. To have this drive of making good for your country and bearing risks, you know, taking risks and maybe making decisions. And third, it's actually this kind of to serve the people that you belong to.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for this, because I think people need to hear that. It's very important. You know, there are so many people right now who feel very down with the situation, you know, the pandemic and everything. And hearing you sharing your personal story and, you know, I'm sure it's going to inspire a lot of people, you know, to want to do better and to serve and to get back together and unite. And I think, yeah, thank you for those words. I think it was very, very nice. Yeah. Michael?
And Minister, from my side, Вітаємо дуже приємно. I'll pop in a question here. I was thinking about it when you were talking about diplomats and salaries. Yuri Klufas, who you probably heard of here in Canada, he described the job of a Ukrainian diplomat these days as very difficult. And he put it kind of in this way, is that say you have a meeting in Brussels or whatever, the Russians or the other counterparts with much more resources tend to show up sometimes days before, have proper sleep, meet with other counterparts. But because of the limited resources of a country like Ukraine, they tend to show up almost the day of the meeting, maybe tired, a little bit stressed, and it's no match for these other guys with more resources. Have things improved for your staff, your diplomats in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, we all learned how to live with pandemic, and that's the message that's the point I'm making in many negotiations. I'm saying, guys, I mean, we cannot use pandemic as an excuse for not doing diplomacy. Pandemic cannot kill diplomacy, and we should not allow that to happen. From a diplomatic perspective, pandemic, and I do not want to sound cynical, but it will be an honest statement, pandemic gave diplomats an excellent, unquestionable excuse not to do things they are not willing to do. So it's like, oh, I'm not coming because we have to wait until the pandemic situation improves. Let's postpone consultations because we have to wait until pandemic situation improves. This decision cannot be taken because of the pandemic. I mean, in diplomacy, I've heard this phrase in 2020. I heard these phrases so often in the first 6 months that I threw my diplomatic politeness away and started telling other ministers, foreign ministers and foreign representatives who had resorted to this argument that, guys, I mean, stop doing this. It's either you want to do it, well, then let's do it. If you do not want to do it, just tell me. That's fine. I'm fine with that answer as well. I think we lost a lot of time. Not only Ukrainian diplomats, but diplomacy as a whole lost a lot of time because of pandemic, because of using pandemic as an excuse. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is, of course, doing VTC and online conferences and online events, consultations. It works. but only to a certain level, because because no online meeting can replace a real meeting between ministers, because you do not get this chemistry, you do not get this level of trust when you know that it's only you and him or you and her, and you can speak things freely. Mm-hmm. But every time that pandemic was taken under control, I'm immediately telling all of my people, travel, spend travel budgets, go abroad, invite people to come here, do as many personal meetings as possible. But pandemic should not be used as an excuse for not doing diplomacy, and that's my approach to it.
Sure, couldn't agree with you more. And I have to say, your esteemed ambassador to Canada, I think, is one of the most well-traveled ambassadors here in Canada. We've even seen him way over on this end of the country, so we're happy to
people were all in one boat, but access to lifeboats is given to first-class passengers. Ukraine was not waiting for others to help. She has been helping others without awaiting gratitude. We dispatched to Italy our medics. We dispatched PPEs. Ukraine has been helping everyone who's needed our help. When the world forgot that the pandemic was not here for good, and all nations would one day reassemble right here, but how would they look each other in the eye? Ukraine has nothing to be ashamed of.
You and President Zelensky and the delegation traveled to the UNGA, the United Nations General Assembly this year, which has been described as the annual Super Bowl of diplomacy. If I'm not mistaken, a few months ago, the US delegation to the UN discouraged delegations from coming to New York because of the pandemic. Did you show up because it's really a choice between becoming obsolete or actually being in person and getting things done?
We came because we had 3 important bilateral meetings confirmed. But I hope no UN official will watch this episode and will not hear me saying that the delivery of the speech at the UN General Assembly was not a sufficient reason to come to New York. But I think the United Nations are doing a great job in some spheres, in some areas of its responsibility, but at the same time, it's failing on the most important mandate it was entrusted with, which is peace and security. Yeah. And we, as a country at war, feel this extremely, extremely well. If we had not had a war, if we didn't have a war in Ukraine, I could have spoken more mildly and more diplomatically about it. But you always feel this so painfully when you see your own country, your nation going through all these things. And I'm afraid that the General Assembly will suffer as a platform because of pandemic, because many countries will actually realize that it's fine when you're not going there, that nothing happens if you just pre-record a statement, that the sky does not fall on Earth, and that pandemic did shatter a reputation of the UN General Assembly as a must-be event. No, I was sitting there and watching all this pre-recorded videos by presidents, and it works perfectly the same way. So unless you have some important bilaterals in New York, or you miss New York too badly, you can always skip General Assembly. I'm sorry to say that, but that's the reality and the feeling that I got from this visit to New York.
No, great answer, and we really appreciate your candor. Just one more quick question on personal side before I hand the mic back to Melissa. I didn't know this. I should have known this from our research. We're reminded that your wife is actually in municipal politics in Kyiv. Can we call you guys a power couple? And with all the travel and work that you both must have, is it sometimes difficult to manage the time?
No, we are two separate political entities united by marriage. That's how that's how I can describe our relations. We made a completely different political careers, I would say. You know, I went through all phases and I made all steps in diplomatic career, from attaché to diplomat to ambassador, and then to becoming a member of the government and foreign minister. So it was kind of my conscious decision to take this path and walk it. My wife, she was a civic, she was an activist. She always worked in the field of arts and art management. She was like a curator and art manager. But 2014, the Revolution of Dignity made a big change to our lives, because I decided to go back to civil service, because I left civil service in 2013 during Yanukovych times. That was a very dramatic moment, and going back to where we started from, you know, my mother was crying after I told her that I'm leaving civil service. I'm not going to be part of the public service anymore. But 2014 changed all of us, and Zhenya launched an initiative helping local communities to, you know, to take care of themselves, basically, and to learn how to work with local authorities and central government to get everything they need from them to have good services, good public spaces, and good life in their communities. So she started this career, and then one day she was offered to become a member of the city council, and she you know, if I want to do more, I have to take this responsibility. And that's how she became a politician. So we always respected each other's choices, or the choices we were making, you know, in building our careers. She always supported me. I always supported her. And I'm happy with what she achieved, because she definitely deserves that.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Melissa?
Well, you are also one of the top youngest, I'd say, diplomats in the history of Ukraine. And here's my question, because a lot of the time when we look at political people, we tend to see people who are mostly seniors, you know, and who have had a lot of experience. So do you personally feel that, did you face any obstacles from your senior peers being that young and being in that position?
So basically you are asking me whether I ever suffered from ageism.
Yes. Yes, I didn't want to say it like that, but yeah, since you said it, have you?
Well, it is true that throughout all of my career, my bosses, my then bosses, were saying he is too young for this position.
Yeah.
They always entrusted me in that position. I always felt they had a risk. I mean, they felt a risk of giving me a job which is usually being done by more experienced diplomats, but I never let them down.
Okay.
And that's how I was climbing the ladder of career.
Right.
And so the question is whether I suffered from it. No, I didn't. But it is true that I was always being told that, Dmytro, you are too young for this job. But I was getting this job anyway, so it's kind of worked in the end. And I really appreciate, and if you count my school and university years as part of my diplomatic life, because my father was diplomat at that time, and I would still follow the thing, then I'm not that young, you know, if you add that age.
Right.
Those years of experience.
You still, I mean, you're still in the younger range considering, I mean, we have more and more now younger people. I mean, our president in France is around your age, right?
You know, when I see headlines on websites, on news outlets, which read the latest 30 before 30, the best 30 before 30, or the best artists who are younger than 35, something like that. I'm now 40. I cannot apply for any ratings. I cannot recognize the best anymore because I turned 40. So there are no ratings for someone over 40. So I will. So
you are feeling the pressure. I thought it was just a woman thing.
I cannot be recognized the best simply because I'm over 40 now. That's unfair.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you don't look 40. I mean, I wouldn't have guessed personally, but I mean, it's interesting because I think it's very much a woman thing. You know, ageism tends to be a female, and we never think that men could actually go through this. So, but you just proven that through experience and just passion and hard work. It's about the result in the end. It's not about what you look like. And also, you're in a generation where you experience a lot. Your parents went through a war. You went through the second revolution. So you went through a panel of different things. So you have a wider scope, because the old generation, you know, like they tend to be more stuck up, you know, into the past and traditions. Having someone younger, it's more relatable for the new generation. And I think that's important, but particularly when it comes to foreign affairs and diplomacy. We want to have somebody we can relate to, who we can listen to and feel like we're close to, that understand the issues. And I think that's a great step. I'm glad that now in politics, you know, they're being more open about, you know, giving a chance to younger people, because they have a voice now, and, you know.
I fully share what you're saying. I personally, I never suffered from ageism, but I understand. But this approach that I shared with you, people were like making jokes. Oh, he's too young for this job, but they were still giving me that job, and I never let them down because I always delivered on what I was. Taught me a very important lesson. That is now extremely helpful when I became a minister, because I am not looking at the age of a person, whether he is over or she is over 60, for example, or below 30.
Yeah.
My only question is, can you deliver?
Right.
And if you can deliver, I will find you the most appropriate position in the ministry that will balance both interests of the system and interests of your personality. And this is, so I appreciate those jokes actually, because they taught me this thing that, you know, I was in that position, and I know how you feel when people when you are capable of doing something, but people do not trust you because, you know,
yeah,
this is the discrimination that kind of that exists. And so in the way I run the ministry, I'm making this point that we should not be over focused on gender equality only. I'm a big fan of gender equality, but everyone is talking about it on every corner. We should focus on equality as a principle, and age, you know, gender equality, age equality. These are equally important things.
Yeah.
And we have to, because we have to balance. The most difficult thing is not to balance ages. The most difficult thing is to balance interests of the system, which I mean the machinery of the ministry, and personal interests and ambitions of the people who serve it. This is the real, the real science, rocket science that I have to deal with as foreign minister. Otherwise, all genders and ages and nationalities are more than welcome in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine.
Great. And I have to say, in my recent travels, well, not even recent travels over the past couple of years at least, meeting your ambassadors, and by the way, your ambassadors and embassies have been very hospitable and helpful to me, I got to say. But I'm seeing a kind of new generation of diplomats, very professional, more females. One of your top diplomatic posts, Washington, D.C., is filled by very accomplished female, as you know. I'm going to ask Melissa to shift us in. Sorry, go ahead.
That I want to mention, just to do some self-advertisement. When I became foreign minister, we had 4 female ambassadors in the system. 4. I have been foreign minister for like a year and a half. We now have 14.
Wow.
Wow.
Ambassadors. And you know what is the most surprising thing about it? Now I'm starting to hear voices criticizing me. They are low, quiet voices, but they now they do exist, criticizing me for being too gender oriented. But my point is that, to ensure equality, one may have to prioritize inequality for some time, to give priority to women, to create this balance. And then rules will be the same for everyone and priority will not be given. But we have spent so many years in conditions of inequality that women simply cannot win their seats in the first row on equal terms. They cannot win them if they play on equal terms. So we should give them a priority, and that's what I'm doing. But when I create the balance, I will make it absolutely equal for everyone, irrespective of gender. Sorry just wanted to finish.
Not at all. I was warned not to ask this question, but since you brought it up, you have a very important decision to make to fill an ambassadorial post here in Canada. Are you going to give us any hint, or we should wait?
Well, I nominated a female ambassador to Ottawa.
Fantastic. All right. Well, we look forward to welcoming her.
I feel in my element right now.
Right.
Female talk.
I'm going to ask Melissa to transition us to EU membership, but before we do, all of those telephones next to you, are they direct lines to Berlin and Paris and presidential office? Or?
Best direct line to Paris and Berlin is WhatsApp.
Okay.
Here we go. This is what happens to have someone from a different generation.
This particular messenger, I'm just making the point about importance of online messengers in diplomacy.
Right. Okay, so let's now dive into Europe. Let's fly to Europe and talk about the EU.
Can we stay in America? No?
I am LA. So I need to get back. I haven't been back home since the pandemic, so I miss Europe. But we'll see. Things are probably going to get better, hopefully soon, and we'll be able to travel more. But on that note, so I have a question for you, Minister, on, okay, so Ukraine is a beautiful country, okay? It has more than 43 million people. It's the second biggest country in Europe, lots of resources. It's known for its brains and grains, has great agriculture, gas, rich resources, smart and beautiful women and men, I guess. I don't know. Haven't met many Ukrainian, but so far it's good. And what's going on? Why is it taking so long for Ukraine to be fully part of the European Union? What's going on here?
Well, we both, Ukraine and the European Union, share responsibility for that.
Okay.
Ukraine has not been consistent on a number of issues, reform-related issues required by the European Union. But at the same time, the European Union has not seen Ukraine as an eventual part of it for decades.
Okay.
And it is only now that I see this idea becoming more widespread. I wouldn't say popular, but widespread in the European Union. On the other hand, it clashes with some very important EU countries who do not want the European Union to expand at all. The problem is the following. By the very nature of the European Union, it has to expand. It cannot stand still. This is because the expansion is the dynamics. Expansion is the movement forward. And I keep repeating these words on every corner, and I will not waste an opportunity to repeat them here, that to play big, Europe has to get bigger. This is my kind of founding principle of how I see our relations with the European Union. And today, as we speak, we see in the news that EU is unlikely to deliver on its promise to Western Balkan countries to integrate them. And this is something that was promised to them on a number of occasions. It was taken for granted for years. Ukraine was never promised a membership. That's important to know. And yet, Western Balkans are facing a situation where their integration will be basically put on hold. The issue here is that if you do not expand into a certain territory, someone else will expand into that territory. And that will create a lot of turbulence. So my point is very simple. If the EU does not expand, it will be getting weaker. And this is something it can allow to happen domestically in that part of Europe that is covered physically by EU member states. But it will be vanishing away as a global power.
Right.
And for Ukraine, it creates risks and challenges in the region because we need EU here in Ukraine for the safety, security, and prosperity of this nation. And what we are ready to pay for that is to make a contribution to EU strength in global affairs and its ability to play as a global power and in expanding its rules of security and safety further to the east. I think it's a fair deal, but unfortunately not everyone in the EU shares my opinion.
But do you think that maybe Brussels is afraid of provoking the Kremlin by making you part of the European Union?
Well, Brussels is a consolidated, reflection of various approaches and perceptions existing in EU member states. So I think the decision about the membership of Ukraine in the EU is not made in Brussels. It's made in Berlin, in Paris, and in 1-2 more capitals. But if we have Berlin and Paris on board, I'm sure that everyone else will immediately follow. So, and why Berlin and Paris are not making that decision, it's exactly the reason that you mentioned.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, that's a great segue into our next question. A previous Global Impact guest, the renowned French commentator Philippe Moreau-Chevrolet, said Germany will always set the tone for EU policy. Would you agree with that, especially given the recent changes in Germany politically?
Well, what is always? I mean, in the coming decades, yes, I think that will be true. I think France feels that it is equally capable of playing that role and setting the tone. I think EU Central European part of the EU is raising the voice as well. The European Union is facing a number of challenges related to leadership, related to the issue of leadership. Who is the leader? What does leadership imply? Mm-hmm. And how can you strengthen the leadership or and avoid seeing how it weakens? I appreciate our relations with Germany. I mean, Ukraine-Germany relations. They are on a good track. The same goes for France, for example. It will not be an exaggeration to say that Ukraine's relations with France are at their best since 1991. This is true by a number of parameters. Mm-hmm. But we still haven't reached the point where Berlin and Paris will consider Ukraine on its own merits and not as part of their Russian policy. And this is the strategy. Mm-hmm. As long as Ukraine will remain a part of the Russia strategy, we will be suffering from inadequate appreciation of this country and inadequate analysis of what this country can do and can contribute. And I know I do not sound diplomatic enough, but this is exactly the point I'm making in both Berlin and Paris. Stop seeing us through the prism of Russia. If you do that, you will see a completely different country, a completely different perspective, and completely different set of benefits for both and gains for the European Union and both of you if we get closer to each other. Right.
Thank you. And it's not really a question, but as you know, diplomacy is a fine art also of examining nuances. I remember at the Normandy format meeting in Paris, your predecessor was there, but it made some headlines when we saw Vladimir Putin pull up in that ostentatious bulletproof, whatever you call it. Macron hugged him, but all President Zelensky got was a handshake. So that was interesting to watch.
Europeans must stop being naive when we are under pressure from powers who at times harden their stance. We need to react and show that we have the power and capacity to defend ourselves, not escalate things, but simply to be respected.
C'est simplement nous faire respecter.
Yes. Well, talking about President Macron and France, let's go back into the US a little bit. So we all know there's been a fiasco exit of the US from Afghanistan. I mean, that's just, that happened recently. And the recent diplomatic incident between France and the US on the submarine deal. That just happened also like the past few weeks. So we also know that Zelensky was invited to the White House, by Biden administration. He was actually here 3 weeks ago, right? If I recall. It's a hard question, but I think it needs to be asked. How can Ukraine trust the Biden administration when they easily can turn against their ally, as it was the case with France? I mean, how do you feel about all this?
One of the most famous advertisements, says, impossible is nothing. So I think diplomats have to work under the premise that impossible is nothing or everything is possible. And but the job of a diplomat is to minimize opportunities for others to sideline you or to ignore you or not to take your interests into account. This is the job of a diplomat. You cannot like in sports, you cannot win all the time. But it doesn't mean that you have to give up competing and you have to give up fighting. We deeply appreciate the role of the United States in strengthening and in building Ukrainian independence since 1991. It goes without saying that today the United States is Ukraine's political and security ally number one. Mm-hmm. This is the statement of the fact. And our job is to make sure that this, that no other country in the world can create such foreign policy circumstances or offers United States something that can shatter this status, in the current status in Ukraine-US relations, or block it from, block these relations from advancing further. I regret seeing what happened. It's particularly striking because we had an excellent conversation in Washington about the importance of alliances and partnerships. But in the end, all nations are driven by their ultimate national interests. And this is the rule. Life of diplomacy is even more cynical than a life of a common man on the street. And you know, one of our first foreign minister, Minister Zlenko, who is a real kind of titan of Ukrainian diplomacy, a real patriarch, if I may, he once said that it's normal in diplomacy, unfortunately, it's a norm of life in diplomacy to pass by a drowning man. Mm. But if you stopped and offered your help, then you have to do everything in your powers to provide that help to the drowning man. And that's life, it happens. And it's a work of diplomats to learn lessons and to first be driven by their national interests, but also to make sure that other countries which are important for your country, they understand that interest, and they never let you down on it.
Wow, okay. Great answer. I had one more question on the heavier side, and Melissa, maybe we should jump ahead after that to the rapid fire questions. We hate to miss out on that.
Oh, unfortunately.
You have to go?
In like 5 minutes.
Okay. Melissa, why don't we do the rapid fire?
Let's do it then.
Okay.
So, your favorite destination to travel?
My home. It's like 300 meters away from my office.
300 meters away from your office.
Nice.
Okay. Well,
next.
I love traveling, but I hate traveling as foreign minister. I hate business traveling. I love traveling for pleasure.
Well, with your lifestyle, that makes sense because you've been traveling a lot. So staying home is a luxury, right?
It is true.
Right. Michael?
Okay, this minister is a question where there's no room for any gray areas. Vareniki, also known here as pierogi or pierogies, fried, baked, or boiled?
Boiled.
Okay.
In Ukraine, boiled, always. Okay. And boiled by my grandmother.
Ah, excellent.
I have to try these. I've never tried pierogies. It's like raviolis, right? It's a form of ravioli or something similar.
Pretty much.
Yes. Melissa, with all my sympathy to you, you embarrassed us. This is not ravioli. Nothing close to pierogi. This is Ukrainian vareniki. And the best one is done with cherry, with fresh cherry inside and eaten with sour cream. And now I personally invite you to Kiev, and I will take you to the restaurant with best cherry stuffed vareniki with sour cream in the entire universe.
Well, I accept the invitation because I need to be cultured on Ukrainian food for sure. Can't wait to try that. All right, on different one. Your favorite actor, actress, and why?
It's a good point. I actually, I'm not watching too many movies. I live without a TV, without television since 2008. Deliberate choice, because I think that there's too much of television in our life, and it basically rotten your minds. So I go to movies from time to time, but I'm not a big kind of movie fan. The movies, I can tell you the movies which I like the most recently. I really loved what is the name of this? The Endgame. Avengers. The
Avengers,
Endgame.
yeah.
Because I have a son who is 15, and he took me to this movie. And I agreed to go because I want to stay connected with him. It was not because of my interest in the movie, but I thought I should share what he likes and what he admires with him. And I actually loved it. I even cried, at some.
You did? It's sad. I guess it is sad.
Until that, I was crying watching cartoons like Cars, all nice stuff teaching you how to live your life. But I really loved Avengers: The Endgame, and I also like watching this kind of art house movies.
Independent.
Yeah, independent movie, a different kind of perspective compared to blockbusters.
I'm gonna have to invite you here in Hollywood and get you to brush up your movies, and maybe you should come here to a premiere and experience it.
Before you visit Ukraine, I will bring a portion of frozen vareniki with cherry with.
She's the luckiest girl on earth right now, I'm telling you.
That's a deal.
Do you have a favorite role model, someone who's really influenced you?
I appreciate everyone I have met through my life, throughout my life, especially former foreign ministers that I worked with. I'm a big fan of my father professionally. He is a respected man because of his professionalism. And but if I look back in history, I think that the person that I really like, I'm not sure he's a role model, but it's someone whom I like, someone whom I admire professionally. It's Winston Churchill. Okay. And we both like cigars, so I feel that I have something in common with him.
Connection.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have a fun question for you. You are tall. Macron is short. Does height matters in international diplomacy? I had to ask.
I think that in diplomacy, every country is equal, irrespective of its size and population and the volume of its economy, and the same applies to the leadership of those countries.
Very diplomatic answer.
Very diplomatic answer.
Finally, I had diplomatic with you. So one last question, and I really have to run because I will be late for.
Okay, so I'll take this one for Melissa. So upon your exit from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, whenever that happens, what would you like to leave behind for your country as a legacy?
I want to have a strong foreign ministry, because Ukraine, in this world, Ukraine can count on its diplomacy and on its army. And I want to have I want to make my contribution to building a strong Ukrainian diplomacy. I want to see a growing, a sufficiently higher volume of export of Ukrainian goods globally, because this is what we are working on. We are helping our exporters, and we want them to make more money and to bring them back in the country. Mm-hmm. Third, I want to leave Ukraine at peace and with a clear understanding that it is strong enough to defend itself and to ensure and to win respect of any other country in the world.
Wow, what a fantastic legacy to leave. Minister, thank you so much on behalf of Melissa and myself and all of our listeners. And by the way, on your a point of popularizing Ukrainian fantastic products and things like that, I am wearing my Ukrainian-made suit. And then tonight at my birthday dinner, I'm going to be serving Ukrainian wine to people who've never tried it. Yes.
Is your birthday today?
Yes.
Oh, Michael, congratulations. Happy birthday. З днем народження, многое літа.
Щиро дякую. Побачимося в Києві. I'll be back in Kyiv in November. Let's go for that beer and cigar or wine and cigar then. Melissa, if you want to say thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Sorry, you said something?
Kyiv in November.
Yes, Kyiv in November. Maybe we'll bring Melissa along for those cherry vareniki. Right.
All right. Well, I just wanted to thank you so much, Minister, and for taking the time to answer all these questions. It's been a pleasure and a very fun time. Surprisingly, I wasn't sure what to expect, but it was really nice.
It was.
And I wish all the best to Ukraine.
Thank you. I was happy to see Michael. It was my great pleasure to meet you, Melissa, and I'm serious about those invitations. So,
well, I'm taking them seriously, and we'll work on that.
Yes. Okay.
But have a great day.
Minister.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So, Melissa, that was really great talk. I think that we have seen a side of Minister Kuleba that many Ukrainians haven't even seen. He was relaxed. He was funny. He, philosophical.
Relatable, very relatable and open. And it just shows a side of politics that people don't get to see. I mean, prior being political people are human beings too. They have lives, they have feelings, passions, dreams. And I'm so glad that he shared that with us. He shared about his background, what his motivation, and his dreams for his country. And I think that was very inspiring. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think some ears will be picked up in Berlin and Paris and other capitals when they hear what he has to say as well, especially about EU membership. So
I got my invitation. So
you got your invitation, and we got a hint who the next Ukrainian ambassador to Canada is going to be as well. That's quite a achievement. Well, we almost call it a development, but the increase in female ambassadors from, I think it was 4 to 14, that's huge. So we thank him very much. We'd also, coming to the end of the program, would like to thank our wonderful, wonderful producer, Priti Bali in London, who is so great at arranging guests, finding guests, preparing us. So we're very, very grateful to her for that.
She's the power behind the throne.
Absolutely.
So to speak.
Yes, the power behind the joint throne. Yeah, so thank you. And thank you to you, the dear listeners.
And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, because we want to keep going with this. We want to connect the dots so you don't have to.
So you don't have to.
Okay, that was delayed again. You always miss that one, Michael.
Maybe next time, yeah.
The timing is off, but we'll get it right eventually.
We'll get it one of these days.
Still have like many episodes to go,
So let's use our native languages. I'll say thank you and dякую.
Merci beaucoup. And we'll see you on the next episode. Do we know which guest we're going to have, Michael?
We advertised already a guest coming up to talk about the leisure and hospitality sector. But things, as in global politics or diplomacy, tends to shift sometimes. So it'll remain perhaps even a little surprise.
Okay.
But, as always, someone who will help us connect the dots.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. So
all right.
I just lost that one. All right. Take care, people.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you on
Take
the
care,
next
everyone.
show.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All the best. Bye.
All the best.